Dads up there. I was a swimmer and a baseball player, and I was always interested in science from my earliest memories. I would go to the creek, get guppies and tadpoles, bring them home, let them hang out in the little swimming pool we had in the yard, and then often have to bring them back down to the creek so they wouldn't die in the winter. But growing up, I thought I wanted to be a dentist. And then I realized, I don't know if it was in middle school or high school, I realized that if you wanted to be a dentist, that you will be required to do additional school after you graduated from undergrad. So I changed my mind. And by the time when I graduated from high school, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be, but I did know that I wanted to major in biology. And so once I got to Frostburg State University, where I earned my undergraduate degree in biology, I majored in biology. And after that, I realized that I actually had an interest in research. And it was during that time in undergrad that I participated in the undergraduate research program to become a biological researcher. And just to let you know, I am not a researcher anymore at this point. There were a couple of points along the way where my career path shifted due to some individual thoughts, but also just the way things felt for me. But I'll be able to get into a little more detail about that in a little bit. But my intention was to be a dentist. I did not become a dentist. I ended up becoming a researcher, where I did research at the National Institutes of Health for a while and also at Georgetown University. But now I am a museum educator. So I'll stop answering and pass this on to the next person.
So I can answer that. I had some slides. I can wait to do it if you want to do it from yours or however you want to do it.
We can save yours for the end. So we can just answer the questions and then I can pull up everyone's slides at the end.
Okay. So at the end of high school. So for me, hello, everyone. Again, I'm Dr. Triesta Fowler. For me, I've known it what I've wanted to be ever since I was actually 4 years old. When I was 4 years old, they had a "what do you want to be" in pre-K, and I asked my mother who is the person that takes care of babies, and we actually looked it up. And back then it was an encyclopedia. You don't know what that is, but they're actual books. There was no web, and we pulled up the name neonatologist, and so she still has framed in my house a writing in my little scratchy handwriting. I was 4 years old and I said, I would like to be a neonatologist. So I've wanted to be a pediatrician or work with kids my entire life. I've never wanted to be anything else. So that was my goal all throughout high school. I did everything I could. I read everything I could. I had my parents read everything to me that I could. I knew what school I wanted to go to. So I was very committed from the very beginning. In high school, I went to Lorraine High School, which is in Suitland, Maryland. It's no longer there. The school right next to Suitland used to be Lorraine High School, where I went. And in that school, they were very strong, and it was all girls school, encouraging women in STEM careers. So that was a great place for me to land. I did anatomy. I dissected a pig. I dissected, all kinds of things. I actually brought my pig home. My parents didn't like that too much, but I was so attached to it. I brought it home. It had a name. And it stunk up my entire house for probably like 2 months. So my mother was very glad when I moved beyond that thing. But yeah, so at the end of high school, I attended Johns Hopkins University, which was my goal college. That's the only place I wanted to go. So I'm glad I got in. And where I pursued my biology and ended up going to medical school at the University of Maryland. So yeah, I've known what I wanted to be for quite some time now. And I'm just blessed to be able to have been carried it out.
I think dissecting a pig in anatomy is such a high school experience that everyone should get. Like, that was the turning point in my anatomy class. We dissected a few things in middle school, but that pig in anatomy, that's like that. It lets you know if you're really down for medicine and science and anything like that.
Yeah, I think the only thing we dissected was a fish when I was in high school, and we also messed it up because to practice before doing that in the class, my friend and I, we had bought one and then we froze it. And then the following morning we took it out and it was still frozen when we made it to school, so we couldn't dissect it. Yeah, anyway. So yeah, my name is Anna. And yeah, to be completely honest, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do when I was little, and even when I was in high school. And I remember there were so many things I liked studying. I think there was a phase when I was really intrigued by philosophy, and I would read a lot of books and stuff. But that's because I had an amazing philosophy teacher in high school. And then I was interested in psychology because I wanted to work with people and help them. And I was figuring out what that could look like. And yeah, I think I also for some time I played with the idea of studying medicine, but my doctor is my dad is a family doctor, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that just because my dad is a doctor. So, and in the end, I happened to read this book over the summer, and it's a series of short stories based on elements on the periodic table, and it's not a science book. It's just a book I read for pleasure, and it was just so nice for me to see how the author managed to talk about science and humanity and like how interesting people can be. And he was drawing these parallels between people's behaviors and nature and chemistry. And I thought, okay, if this is what it means to become a chemist, I want to be one. And that's how I ended up studying chemistry in my undergraduate. And then I was like, okay, we will figure it out. So my story is pretty much a story of, okay, what is interesting for me right now? At that point, I thought, okay, this is definitely something I want to know more about. And then I managed to kind of bring other interests that I had in my life into the job I do now. So I guess the interest for people and helping them has always been there. So I did some volunteering, and I was a teacher for a while, and I really enjoyed it. I think teachers are absolute stars. And what I do now is I help scientists to collaborate, especially when they come from different disciplines and they need to work on a joint project. I kind of help the kind of group activity, and I really enjoy it because it's cool to get to know what scientists do. And it's just mind-blowing sometimes. I'm like, I can't believe someone is actually studying this. So I guess I'm still intrigued by what people are studying and researching. And it's a very privileged position, but it's a job that I didn't know existed when I was in high school, and probably didn't even existed when I was in high school.
So our question number 2, I think some of you kind of really said this, but if you could, I guess, elevator pitch your journey or give advice for students that have no idea right now, like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, I just know what people around me do. How could they find their way or know what schools or what programs to look for after they graduate from KCP?
Okay, so for me, the way I got to where I am now was through a combination of things. The first thing I did along the way is I tried to identify the things that I did not want to do. Because if you don't know what you want to do, you still have to learn and get some experiences to understand what it is that's out there. And then you can figure out what things are possibilities and other things that are things that you don't want to do at all. But on top of that, what I did is I listened to my heart. I always made sure things made sense and felt right to me, but then I also listened to my head because I need to know that I'll be able to take care of myself and take care of my family if I follow through with this path. So for example, I ended up going to Frostburg State University, where I majored in biology, like I said. And during my time there, I participated in an undergraduate research program called the Ronald E. McNair Undergraduate Research Program. And so I did 2 summers of research at the University of Maryland. And it was during my summers doing research that I understood that a career in research was exactly what I wanted to do. And so I applied to graduate school. I applied to 7 different schools. I got into 4 and ended up going to Georgetown University, where I earned my PhD in biology back in 2012. Now, during my time there, I learned a lot. What I really learned was that to become a scholar, to become a PhD, to become an expert in anything, you really need to focus. I mean, focus in a way that you've never thought you had to focus. And then also you're going to become an expert in an area that's really narrow, but you'll know so much about that single area. And that is what will help for you to become an expert. And so I had to change my way of thinking from when I started graduate school in order for me to make it through graduate school and then get out of there. Now, my path straight through graduate school wasn't easy and it wasn't always linear. I failed my qualifying exams, which are the exams, my comprehensive exams, which are the exams that let your advisor and your other committee members know that you are now able to be considered a PhD candidate and then begin your research full time so that you can get out of school. So I failed it my first time, and then I came back a few months later and I passed it, and I passed it well. And that's the thing I was talking about when I was saying I had to learn how to think like an expert and ask questions and ask second questions and ask third questions to make sure that I had all of my bases covered. And so after I finished graduate school at Georgetown, I ended up going to the National Institutes of Health, where I did a postdoctoral fellowship. And while I was there, I was researching uh, gene regulation and reproduction in a worm. The worm is called C. elegans, and it's one of the model organisms that is used in a lot of biology. And they pretty much know every single thing about the worm. It has about 1,000 cells in it. And from the moment of fertilization up to when the worm becomes an adult, they have mapped out every single cell division and, which way cells will turn, when they'll divide, how quickly they'll divide, and then how cells die as well. So I worked on researching that organism, and it was honestly a lot of fun. It was one of the most enjoyable times of my life because you're able to play in a lab. It doesn't necessarily feel like work because you get to be curious, you get to do experiments, and you get to share your information with others and become seen as an expert. And so following my time at the NIH, during my time at the NIH, I realized that research wasn't the full picture for me. That's not necessarily what I wanted to do for my career. And so while I was at NIH, I met with a woman who worked at the Carnegie Academy for Science Education in Washington, D.C., and she allowed me to come and volunteer at her organization, which was called the First Light Science Program. And that's a program that brings in professionals and other volunteers to help teach science and STEM to middle school students in Washington, D.C. And so I did that for a year and a half. And following my period at the Carnegie Academy for Science Education, what I did is I decided to make a full commitment to becoming a science educator. I started my nonprofit organization called the First Life Science Program. And what we did is we reached out to elementary, middle school, and high school students in the Washington, D.C., and Maryland and Virginia area, and provided STEM education programs, STEM fairs, and after-school programs for students in the DMV area. And it was during that time that I realized that being a STEM educator was far more fulfilling than it was being a researcher. And so that's what I'm talking about when it comes to following my heart. I was trying to do the thing that made me the happiest, but also allowed me to take care of myself and kind of live the life that I wanted to live. And so following my time at NIH, I went to the National Science Foundation as a science policy fellow. And I used that time really as an opportunity to learn new skills and then make a break from the research world and then get myself fully ingrained into the STEM education world. And then following that period at the National Science Foundation, where I was for 2 years, I ended up in the position at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. So I'm going to tell you a real quick story just to tell you how I got here. So when I was at Georgetown University, there was a colleague of mine who was there. She ended up leaving and ended up going to another organization. I heard back from her several years later, and I worked with her when she was working at the Smithsonian. And then I went on my way, and then I heard from her a couple years later. She asked me if they wanted to pass my name along to people at the museum. I said yes, even though I was tired of volunteering and doing that type of work for free. But I allowed her to pass my name on to the people at the museum. And next thing you know, I was called in for an interview, and I ended up getting a job offer before that interview was over. And so the whole point of that story is that your network matters. The people who you know matters. The way you treat the people that you know matters. Because if I had been mean to this woman, I guarantee you she would not have even passed my name or thought about me at all when it came time to put my name in for this position. So think about the people who you know, think about how you can help them, think about how they can help you, and think about how you can treat them, because you never know who you can help or how they can help you.
So I would say my journey post high school was a lesson in not only what the previous speaker talked about with doing what your heart drives you, but also kind of a lesson being open and being open to all opportunities when they come your way. So again, as you heard me say, I was very much committed to medicine from the very beginning. I knew what school I wanted to go to. I wanted to go to Johns Hopkins. I got in, I went to school there, and I learned very quickly just by understanding the whole journey to become a physician. And I say this all the time to students that I speak to from your level, from high school all the way up through postdoc. Medicine is more than a career, it's a life choice. So for me, just like the previous speaker said, I had to really understand the commitment and the life choice I was making when I decided to study medicine, because I went in when I was 17, and by the time I finished residency, I was 28 years old. So that's a very large commitment of time. So understanding that from the very beginning is how you begin to understand where you want to go and what you want to do. So understanding that that was a commitment I was doing after undergraduate at Johns Hopkins University. I went on for 4 years of medical school at the University of Maryland. Following that, I did residency, and I wanted to kind of travel a little bit, not too much. I went to Philadelphia and did a rotation at a hospital in Philadelphia to learn more about neonatology. And then I ended up back here at the Inova Fairfax Hospital for Children for my remaining years of residency. And then after that, I like to say life happened. And I had a commitment to medicine that was bar none. It was my first love. I always say medicine was my first love. And I kind of wasn't expecting a 9-pound, 10-ounce child to come into my life, and became, then that took it kind of, as my mom said, he gave me a lobotomy. So it was as if my entire life had a new focus. So I needed to understand how to integrate this new love of mine with my first love of medicine. And I took some time off to really understand that, because like the previous speaker said, I knew what brought me joy, which was medicine, but also being a parent brought me great joy. And the way I was experiencing medicine, being in a private practice, seeing patients all day, rounding in the hospital, was not compatible with the way I wanted to experience parenting. So I took a pause, and I actually stopped for the first time since I was probably 17 years old and thought about, what do I want to do? And in just kind of thinking about that, one of my colleagues said, have you ever thought about NIH? And at first I said, no, I don't want to work with rats. In my mind, I love my patients. Like, I love my patients and I want to see them. I want to hold their hands, and I'm not an animal person. I'm just not. And they're like, no, NIH is doing this big thing called bench to bedside. And at that point, they were wanting to bring clinicians in to kind of bridge the gap between research and how we experienced it in practice. And I said, okay, that might be a good idea. So I applied. I got a call from my now mentor, Dr. Yvonne Maddox, and she called me, and I was still on maternity leave. And my maternity leave was for about 1.5 years, just so you're aware. And she said, hey, I got your application. Can you come in and talk to me? I said, sure. I came in and talked to her, and she said, the job that you initially applied to? She's like, I don't want you to do that. I was like, well, then why am I here? I don't understand. And she says, well, I read your resume and I read your experience. I want you to do something else. I want to create a role for you that doesn't exist, and I want you to imagine it any way you want it to. So this was very scary. And it was an opportunity, though. It was an opportunity to bring my love of patient care to a larger population. So she had me create an education program called the National Child Maternal Health Education Program, which I led for about 12 years. And it was a great experience for me, because before, when you go through medicine, it's very much a tailored track. They tell you, you got to go to residency, you do all these things that they tell you to do. Now I was in a position that no one told me what I needed to do. So I was able to really imagine it anywhere I wanted to. And it was a great opportunity. I learned a lot. I was able to move my love of patient care from my cadre of patients. Now I like to say I take care of the world. So I influence the policy and I influence education for patients all around the world, not just the patients that I was able to see. But I was open to that opportunity. And if I hadn't been, I would have missed out on even coming to NIH, being open to what else is to do at NIH. And now I've expanded my role to trainees, and I do a lot of education of our post-bac trainees, which is after college, and then our postdoc trainees, which is after you get your doctorate. I also do all the diversity initiatives within the Division of Intramural Research. So my career has been taking advantage of opportunities when they arise. So if that would be two things I would leave with you would be, think about your career as more than just a career, a life choice, and then being open as you go to different opportunities and taking advantage of them as they come along.
Yes, I totally agree with this. And I think it's interesting because I guess there's a moment when you realize you are today in a place, and part of that was planned because, as Christopher said, you know what matters to you, what is important to you, what you want to do with your life. And part of it is what happens, like life does happen. So I think for me, in my case, it was a bit the same. I started studying science because I was interested in science. And I didn't realize, for example, because I didn't know, because no one in my family is a scientist. My dad is a doctor, but the rest of my family, my mom didn't go to university, for example. So I didn't know what I could do with a science degree. I just thought it was interesting. And then it turns out that as a scientist, you have a lot of opportunities to go and work in different labs in different countries. And that was something I was super excited about because I always wanted to travel and go abroad and live abroad for a while. I mean, as you can hear, English is not my first language. So it was a great opportunity that sometimes you can do a secondment, or you can go for a few months or for a year, or you can do part of your master's in a different country. You can go and work in different labs, and labs are really international environments. And I realized that was something I really loved, like working with people from different countries with different backgrounds. And science was giving me the opportunity of being in that environment. And when I figured that out, I was like, oh, okay, suddenly it's not just about the science I like doing, but it's also where I want to do it. And I can go everywhere I want in the world in a way. I mean, yes, that's kind of the high ambition. And obviously you try and figure out, and also you start thinking, okay, do I want to be closer to my family, a bit further away? And yeah, so that's another great opportunity. And that's how I found myself in a place where I was given an offer to go and work in a company that was in a different country, and that's Johnson & Johnson. I remember all my friends were like, oh, are those the shampoo people or the baby powder? Yes, that's not what I was doing, but I went to work there. And again, I remember some days I was like, I would have never imagined that I could be in this place doing what I'm doing now. It was just an offer that came up, and they offered me an interview, and I said, okay, why not? So I think that's really important to remember, that you may know, okay, this is something I like and I want to do in my life. And as someone just said before, yeah, just be mindful that there's a lot of other people around you. You never know what could happen. And, some people may think of you when they get an opportunity they can't take, and they, give your name to someone. But also in the future, maybe you find yourself in a place where you're like, oh, okay, actually, I know someone else that works there, and I can maybe give them a ring and ask them what it's like. So I think it's really important to keep in mind that there's a career, but the career is also made of all the people that we happen to meet in our life. And I think for me that was the first step, because then I realized, okay, I really like to travel. And then I ended up working again at university. I realized I liked being around students, and I like to work in academia. So that's how I ended up where I am now.
You guys have such great stories. Part of me wants to get in that PhD program. I did a year in a PhD program. I made the mistake of doing it right after my bachelor's, and I was like, oh no, this is a bad idea. So that's how I got into teaching. And now here I am 6 years later trying to figure out if I'm ever going to leave. But our third question, how involved is your family when it comes to what you do? Like, I know as a teacher, at first, when I was just science and math, my family was like, it's hard. But then once I switched over to education, my mom's a teacher, so she kind of understood a little more. But does your family understand your work, or they're like, oh no, he just works the museum down the street, or she's just a doctor?
That's a funny thing. So when I got to graduate school, my aunt was wondering. She's like, "Why would you want to go to more school?" She didn't understand why I would go and get a PhD. And I think when I graduated, she was very proud of me. But that initial moment of starting grad school, she didn't understand what I was doing. My parents didn't understand what I was doing. So what I did is that when I would write anything, I would just send it home, and my dad would literally sit and read the proposals that I submitted to the NIH. I know he had no idea what was going on, but he realized during that time, like, oh, Chris is going to be studying this intestinal parasite the entire time he's in graduate school. So that helped my family understand what I was doing in graduate school. But working at the museum, I think it's a little bit easier for them to understand. And it's for a couple of reasons. One, everyone understands what you do at a museum, and I just let them know I work with teachers, students, and the public to tell the stories of African Americans and the contributions they've made to our country and to the world. But I do that all by focusing on STEM. And also, my parents have been able to see me in action for some of my programs. So most of my programs, before COVID happened, were all done in person, done in the museum with just maybe 20 to 30 teachers or maybe 50 students at any given time. But since things have gone virtual, my parents have actually been able to see me speak to astronaut Victor Glover while he was on the International Space Station last year in December. So they have an idea of what I get to do and who I get to work with now that I'm working at the museum.
So that's a very interesting question. So I have to break this question up. So there's my family and then there's my son. So I would say that I'm the first physician in my entire family. And my grandmother used to always say, aren't you finished with school yet? She's like, you've been in school a really long time. Are you doing it right? And I said, I think I'm doing it right. I think it just takes a long time. So they really didn't understand how long it took and what I was actually doing and why I didn't get to come to Christmases almost 5, 6, 7 years in a row, why I worked on New Year's Eve, why I did all, they really didn't understand it. After it, I will say, I saw when I walked across the stage to get my medical degree, my dad had it and he's had it ever since. It hangs in his house. I haven't seen it since then. In fact, I had to get a copy of it when I needed to get credentialed. I said, well, can you copy it for me? Because I haven't seen it since you took it. So they're very proud of it. But yeah, it was a lot of a learning curve, exactly what I did. Going to NIH was also something they were very unfamiliar with. They would say, I thought you didn't want to do that. And so I have to explain it to them. Having said that, I think they still just think of me as a doctor. I'm a pediatrician, but I'm everybody's doctor. I would say I've become a very good geriatrician. I deal with, I'm very good at that now. My mom just gives my number out like it's, a cab number. She gives it to random people. They call me for whatever reason and ask me their medical history and ask me medical questions. I get pictures. I get texts, I get emails, and most of them are from my family or friends because I'm everybody's doctor. So I think they've gotten the doctor part down, but the pediatrician part, not so much. Now, my son, on the other hand, he is just very unimpressed. He just sees me as mom. I recently presented at his school, and when they did my bio, he looks at me and he was like, you did all that? When'd you have time? So he's just very unimpressed. He's just, I'm just mom to him. So he knows what I do. He can tell you, but the implications of which he's like, no, you're just mom. So he's my sobering influence in my life. He keeps me grounded. When I come back from work, I'm just mom to him. So yeah, they do understand, but don't, but they're all very proud. My grandma, may she rest in peace, would tell everybody, what her granddaughter did and where her granddaughter went to school, etc. So it's been a little bit of a lift explaining all of it. My mom, on the other hand, was very much like your dad. She reads everything I do. She Googles me. She finds things that I don't find. And she's like, did you know you were here? I was like, nope, I didn't know that. So she reads everything and she Googles everything. My sister does that as well. So sometimes they find things that I don't find. So it's been really fun having to educate them. I will say, because of that, my niece went into medicine because of that. She's a medical assistant, getting her nursing degree at Howard University. So I'm very proud of her for doing that. So I have had some influence, but again, back to my son, he's graduating from high school this year. And the one thing he said, Mom, I need to tell you something. I'm not going to be a doctor. He broke it to me. And I just said, okay, it's okay. He said, I didn't know how to tell you, but no. I said, it's okay. So, I've gotten over that trauma, and, he's off in his way. So it's been mixed bag as far as my family, but it's been fun going through the journey with him.
Yeah, okay. I can probably relate to that, being where your son is. Yeah, so just to give you a sense how much my family understands what I do, or what I used to do. So as I mentioned, I used to work for Johnson & Johnson, and I was working in Janssen, which is the branch of it's a big company, and that's like the branch that works on medicines and drugs. And I can't tell you how many times in the past few weeks my uncle or my dad or like my family came to me saying, oh, I read something about it. Can you imagine? This is how they do drugs. And I'm like, this is what I've been doing for the past 10 years of my life. When I was telling you about my PhD, that's the thing I used to do. And it's like they're reading this for the first time. And I'm like, okay. So I think it's really, I thought I had explained it, but I realized that probably we were not on the same page. But at the same time, I realized that in a way, it's not that important. That like they know I worked making drugs. I think they probably don't really know what it means unless you've been in a lab or you've worked in a production plant. You don't really know what it's like. So then suddenly there's an article, in the newspaper, or the news are talking about, showing, on the news, if you keep seeing all the vials and injections, and suddenly everyone knows what a vial is and how big they are, and you're like, yeah, that's what I've been doing for years. Amazing. And I think, yeah, so that's they've always been very supportive, as in if I said, okay, I think there's this really great opportunity in that lab and I would like to go there, and that meant relocating and me being abroad or away for some time, they've always been supportive, even though they couldn't understand. I think they really trusted me, and I think that support means a lot. So I was like, okay, so that's as far as it gets. But in terms of what exactly I do, I'm not sure they know much about it. But in the end, it's fine, because I think, as Triesta said, the moment I walked on stage to get my PhD diploma, they were clearly so happy and proud that I thought, okay, that's what matters in this moment. I don't care if they don't know what I don't know, production process is. That's fine.
I love it. At least some people can relate. My mom told me when I got my undergrad in science, like, I'm not helping you with your homework. I just want you to know you cannot ask me for help on your homework. So then I got through it, and then that's when I was like, I'm gonna go to grad school. And it was like, okay, just go. Whatever you do, it's just school. And then I became a teacher, and then I decided, I chose to stop teaching and go back to grad school and get my master's in pharmacy, because I just knew I was gonna get a PharmD degree and be a pharmacist somewhere. But then they pulled me, like I said, pulled me back to education. So my mom is convinced that I'm just trying to create a bunch of little me's out there. I'm like, no, I just want to create students that love science and math and don't hate it. That's genuinely my goal. Is so many African American and minority, mainly I taught African American and Hispanic in North Carolina, they just hate science. And it's like, it's so wonderful. How could you hate it? So that's what I'm trying to do. So this last question is just basically advice for things, or for students who think science is too hard, because out of the 25 kids on my Zoom, there are the 20 of them that are sitting there silent. And half of them probably are making breakfast right now because they're like, Miss Hawkins, I'm not doing this after graduation. I'm just doing this so I can pass your class. And then some of them are paying attention. But while you're answering this, you guys, if you are on the Nearpod, I am going to pull up the Nearpod screen, you guys, so that you can answer or drop any questions if you have any. So I'll drop that link for you that you can answer. And then just this last question for our speakers is, what advice do you have for students that's just, my class is too hard for them, no matter how funny I am, no matter whatever, they just would rather go to art than come to chemistry during second period?
So I would say if you think science class is too hard, it's not that things are too hard necessarily, it's that maybe you haven't found the reason why it's important in your life. Because if you've figured out why science was important in your life, you would probably be a little more interested. So everybody who's sending a text right now, everybody who's watching TV right now, everybody who's on their phone, on their computer, you are using technology and you are using science, you're using STEM every single day, probably 100% of your life, unless you're sitting out in the middle of a field with no clothes on, you are relying on STEM to some degree to keep you alive. Now, the thing is, you don't have to know enough STEM to be a scientist. You just need to know enough STEM that you can make informed decisions in your life that can help you, that can help your family or other people that you care about. So it's like when you come to science class, don't think about it as, oh, I have to be a scientist. No, just think about, how can I use the things that I'm learning here in class today to make my life better, to make my life easier, or to make the lives of other people that I care about easier. And once you find that connection and find that reason why it's important, I promise you it's not going to be nearly as difficult, and you'll probably end up liking it a lot more than you ever thought.
So my two things. Well, my father's view of science education, is education in general. He says it's not so much about what you're learning. Sometimes is it teaches you how to think. That was his main thing. Teaches you how to think. So if you don't necessarily are pulled to science and tech and STEM career, use it in helping you how to do more critical thinking, how to think through certain problems, because I can guarantee you that part of it you will apply in almost everything you do. My other recommendation is, I think science and technology is more so even now than when I was coming up. You can reimagine it. You can reimagine it to almost do anything. We have doctors that work at Apple. We have doctors that work at Google. We have doctors that work, in the horrible world of video game industry. That is the bane of my existence. Don't hate me, but I hate those things. I hate them. There's someone had to create that. Someone had to program that. Someone had to do the tech for that. It just doesn't happen, So I would say you have an opportunity to find something, as Christopher said, that you love, and then find how they got it there. It didn't just appear. How did they create that? How do how does TikTok work? There's a reason why it works. There's a reason why, it's there. Find that out. So find out what you love and then the background of what it is. That kind of will lead you to your career and lead you to where you are. It's okay if the native idea of science and technology doesn't interest you, but I guarantee you, if you kind of look for the nugget in it, like Christopher said, and then find where it leads you, you'll also become interested, and you may find yourself surprisingly knee deep in it. Because I think our kids, and growing up now, they're more technologically astute than I ever were. I mean, the fact that they can do what they do on those godforsaken video games, that's just definitely more advanced than I was at their age. I could not, at 3 years old, operate an iPad. So, I think you are more technologically astute than you know. So you may know more science and technology than you actually give yourself credit for.
I totally agree. I think, well, first of all, it's not that it's too hard. I think there is sometimes this idea that some people are just, naturally talented for these things, and that's not really true. Like, I happen to have a great chemistry teacher, and that's why I thought chemistry was cool. So if it's something you like, you will definitely make it. There's no such a thing as people who just have a kind of a scientific mind, and if you don't have it, then oh, okay, you're lost. No, absolutely. And I think it's true that if there's something that matters to you. So I've spoken with people who said, okay, I was interested in water management because of something that happened in their childhood, or like they wanted to be doctors for certain reasons. So I think it's really a matter of, you know, thinking what can you do with that? And yeah, as it was said, like you're probably already much more tech savvy than I used to be when I was a little child, even though you probably don't know it. So it's not necessarily that you need to win a Nobel Prize to call yourself a scientist or feel like you're a proficient STEM researcher. Science and technology can really bring you wherever you want. Yeah, I think it's the Google and TikTok example is a good example.
Thank you guys so much. Everyone, we are about 3 minutes out. So I did drop the exit ticket at the beginning of class. I'll drop that one more time while we are wrapping up for you to complete. And then also drop in the chat one last time. Please drop one more thank you to our speakers today. One, thank them for getting you out their test and putting it to another day because your test is tomorrow. Don't forget. But then also thank them for taking time out of their busy day and really coming to talk to you guys. It's bigger than just chemistry. I know I tell you chemistry is the best subject out there because it is, but it's bigger than just chemistry, right? Science can get you in so many other areas. And I really want to start just providing you that exposure to let you know that you can do a lot of things. You can work in museums, you can be doctors, you can still work in offices, you can be in labs, you can cut up animals, you can cut up people. There's so many things you can do with science, and I really just want to open your eyes to that. Thank you to Ajane, Jaja, Ashley, and Jada for leaving your comment on your question and answer board. To our speakers, I hope that this is not the last time we hear from you here. I do want or aim to put together a big roundtable at the end of the year for our students where I hope to just bring everyone back. So I will touch bases with you via email, and I cannot thank you so much for taking the time to come talk to them today.
Thank you for having us.
No problem.
Yes, thank you for the invite. Much appreciated.
No problem. I will post this video on YouTube, guys, so that you can see it, and I'll post a link on Google Classroom. Make sure to leave any notes on Instagram, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much. You have a test tomorrow. Please don't forget about your test tomorrow. Please text me if you need me for any help, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. This was amazing. I love it. This made my day. I don't know how fifth period is gonna go, but hey, this was a good day.
Thanks. I think you're doing an amazing job. I'm really impressed. Yeah, I think teachers are just
thank you.
Great. So yeah.
Definitely a hero. I only have one teenager at home. To deal with more than one at a time, my hat's off to you. Yeah. You're an angel.
I've only taught high school, and I tell people all the time, like, I was like, oh, they're just my children. And now I have a son who's 3, and I'm like, how do I do 90 teenagers at one time? So now I'm just like, look, you can't do this. Now I really understand as a parent, like, I don't know how I do it, but I would never choose any other grade.
Yes, well, hats off to you. You guys are angels. I don't see how you do it.
When you're following your passion, amazing things happen.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
You definitely
do
have
anything.
to be committed.
Mm-hmm.
Those little fellows and young ladies they're special. Real special.
2000 children. It's the 2000 babies. They're just a different breed than a lot of us are used to. Even myself, I say, you guys, I would not do that in high school. Like, and it's just amazing.
Thank you again. Take care. Have a good afternoon.
Yeah, have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Have a good
Awesome.
one. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mr. Guardia. You are amazing.
Oh, sure. I think that we were very lucky this time as well. It was everything last moment, but you know, these panelists were great, and I will be writing a thank you email, but you can do it as well by the end of the day. And I will send you an email about Saturday. I still have to see.
Yeah, I think it's going to rain.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it's going to rain here. So I think we might postpone it. I'm gonna go ahead and postpone it to give my kids a little heads up.
Okay.
For next Saturday or the Saturday after. I'll look at the calendar.
Sounds great. Just keep me posted, and we will find a way to help you, and maybe we can meet each other before the end of our program.
All right. Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
All right, you guys. You do have a test tomorrow, but we're not even gonna stress about it, y'all. It's gonna be on Edulastic. We're gonna start it together and we're gonna rock out and see how it go. All right. So thank you guys for staying the whole time. Do your exit ticket. I will look at the reviews and stuff, and we'll come in and tackle this test together tomorrow. All right, y'all have a good one.